Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. Italian President Sergio Mattarella will pray for peace together with the nation's bishops on the feast of St. Francis in front of his tomb in the town of Assisi on October the 4th. In 1936, Pope Pius XII proclaimed St. Francis of Assisi the patron saint of Italy, and since then every year, representatives of a region light votive lamps in front of the saint's tomb. This year, the President himself will carry out this traditional act in which representatives of civil and military institutions, health operators and volunteers will also be present. The President of the Italian Episcopal Conference, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, invited all the bishops to participate in the celebrations of October the 3rd and the 4th in Assisi to make a special prayer for Italy, for peace and for the victims of the pandemic. In what is seen as a radical move, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a new foreign policy on Monday based on an imperialistic concept. The new policy plan is based on a Russian worldview that includes radical policies such as the one used to justify the occupation of Ukraine. The 31-page document outlines the doctrine that Moscow justifies as one that protects, safeguards and advances the traditions and ideals of the Russian world. It says that Russia would strengthen its relations with ethnic Russians in countries that were once part of the Soviet Union until the 1990s. The president has alleged that 25 million ethnic Russians in those states are facing oppression. Geopolitical experts warn that this policy could seriously jeopardize the balance in Europe and in Central Asia. Separately, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has confirmed that the Ukrainian Air Command shot down 5 Russian cruise missiles on Tuesday as the war still rages. In West Africa's Burkina Faso, at least 35 people lost their lives when their vehicle with supplies struck an improvised explosive device on Monday. The vehicle was part of a convoy when it struck the IED between Djibo and Burzanga in an area where jihadist militants have been conducting attacks since 2015. As many as 37 people were injured in the blast. The interim government said security personnel quickly responded by securing the area and assisting the victims. The country has been battling a 7-year insurgency that has left 7,000 dead and forced 1.9 million people to flee. The Archbishop of Astana in Kazakhstan has said that the upcoming visit of Pope Francis will be a blessing for the Catholic minority in the Central Asian nation. Archbishop Peta of Astana said in an interview that he is convinced that the papal visit is a great blessing for Catholics and for other citizens. The Pope is making his 38th apostolic visit to Kazakhstan's capital Nur-Sultan from September the 13th to the 15th to participate in the 7th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions. The Polish-born Archbishop said the participation of the Holy Father in the Congress raises the level of this event and points to the care of the Church for peace and the welfare of all humankind. Catholics make up around 1% of the country's population of 19 million. A Catholic bishop in Nigeria has decried the growing number of kidnappings and murders of priests and religious in the country. Bishop Peter Nwari-Chukwu of Akabaliki in Ebonyi State in the southeastern part of the country also blamed the federal government for failing to quell the rising tide of violence. The prelate made these allegations while speaking to media persons in Abakaliki during the inauguration of the Catholic Media Practitioners Association. The bishop lamented that the church has lost many priests in the north, the Middle Belt and the southeast. He said the persecution of priests shows that what they stand for reaches the consciences of their assailants. In his address, the prelate also quoted the gospel passage from Matthew 16:35, where Jesus says the powers of darkness will not prevail over the church. As Iraq faces the threat of civil war in the absence of a proper government, Christian leaders have joined hands to tackle this threat and political instability. Over the past few weeks, leaders of various parties comprising Chaldean, Assyrian and Syrian Christians have met several times in Erbil in autonomous Kurdistan. The leaders are trying to work out common political strategies and proposals to ensure peace and stability in the region that cannot afford yet another civil war. During the meeting on Saturday, September the 3rd, members of the Patriotic Union of Mesopotamia and the Assyrian Democratic Movement took part. They expressed their wish to create a joint delegation to meet with politicians to explain their aspirations. In an interview with Suroyo TV, Joseph Sliwa of the Patriotic Association of Mesopotamia slammed the quota system, where 5 of the 329 seats in Parliament are reserved for Christians. In Muslim-majority Pakistan, Catholic believers are gearing up to take part in the annual pilgrimage to the national Marian shrine at Mariamabad, which is around 80 kilometres away from the city of Lahore. The annual pilgrimage will take place from September the 9th to the 11th, and thousands of believers are expected to take part in it. After a 2-year gap, it was in 2021 that the authorities allowed the pilgrimage to resume in Mariamabad, which in the Urdu language means the City of Mary. The shrine, established in the 1890s by a European Capuchin bishop, became better known outside Pakistan when the pilgrimage resumed in 2021. The epicentre of the pilgrimage is the Marian Grotto atop a hill in Mariamabad, which is located in the province of Punjab. An appeal against the French government's censorship of a video encouraging pregnant women with a Down syndrome baby not to undergo abortion has been dismissed by the European Court of Human Rights. The Strasbourg-based court decided to dismiss the appeal filed in support of freedom of expression on the basis that the applicants cannot claim to be victims within the meaning of Article 34 of the European Convention on Human Rights. The case goes all the way back to 2014, and it involves a video named Dear Mother-to-Be. It depicts the answer to a letter from a pregnant woman whose child was diagnosed with Down syndrome. In the letter, she says she's really scared and is concerned about what kind of life the baby will have. In response, the video shows images of children with Down syndrome from across Europe who talk about how happy their lives are, despite their complexities. After it was broadcast, the French authorities told TV stations not to do so in the future. Catholic believers in the Colombian capital Bogotá assembled at the airport on Saturday to pray the Rosary, seeking the reopening of the chapel there. Opain, the firm that operates and manages El Dorado Airport, announced last month that the Catholic chapel in the building would be closed and later converted into a place of reflection for members of all faiths. This upset Catholics, who gathered under the banner of the Solidarity Social Research Institute and conducted a march that ended outside the airport. They then prayed the Rosary, seeking the intercession of Our Lady of Fatima for the reopening of the chapel. President of the Institute, Samuel Angel, said that everyone is living in a time of calamities and oppression, and they are the accumulation of evils as men have distanced themselves from Jesus and his laws. In Australia, the Catholic bishops have issued a guide on gender and identity to be followed in church schools. Titled Created and Loved, the Guide on Gender and Identity contains a pastoral approach based on the theological, medical and legislative context in which such schools can function. Archbishop Peter Comensoli, chair of the Bishops' Commission for Life, Family and Public Engagement, said Created and Loved is grounded in Christian anthropology, which values the worth and dignity of every person and also sees each person holistically. While respecting the dignity of each person, the guide also underscores the teaching of the Church regarding such matters. This comes as Australian society is witnessing an uptick in the rates of gender incongruence. Both Germany and Israel commemorated 50 years since the Munich Olympics attack in which 11 Israeli athletes were killed by Palestinian extremists. During the ceremony, leaders of both nations hoped that a long-awaited compensation package for bereaved families will help them finally find healing and reconciliation. On Wednesday, Berlin agreed to provide 28 million euros in compensation to the victims' kin. For the first time, the German state also acknowledged its responsibility for failings that led to the deaths of the athletes. Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier admitted it was shameful that it had taken such a long time for Berlin to reach the agreement with the victims' families. Steinmeier said at a state banquet for his Israeli counterpart Isaac Herzog, "For far too long, we have refused to acknowledge the pain of the bereaved." In Syria, the Syriac Orthodox Church has named the successor of an abducted archbishop whose whereabouts are still unknown even after 9 years. Patriarch Ignatius Afrin II of the Syriac Orthodox Church confirmed the election of Mor Boutros Cassis as the new Archbishop of Aleppo. He succeeds Archbishop Yohanna Ibrahim, who was kidnapped along with Greek Orthodox Archbishop Boulos Yazigi on April the 22nd in 2013, while they were returning to Syria from Turkey. Since then, their whereabouts are unknown. This prompted priests, members of religious councils and heads of church committees to meet the Patriarch and seek the nomination of a new Archbishop. It was in 2019 that Mor Boutros Cassis was consecrated as a patriarchal assistant with the additional role of Patriarchal Vicar of Aleppo. The new Archbishop Cassis studied electronic engineering before doing theological studies in Sednaya in Syria and later in Thessaloniki in Greece. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again tomorrow for more. And remember, you can also visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.